Love and friendship. That's right, everybody. We're talking a classic today. A classic of the genre because we are diving straight into our first ever Jane Austen adaptation. A author that is not one I've really dived into. I'm still a young guy. I know of the works pretty well. I've seen most adaptations. I have a deeper understanding of her than other contemporaries of mine, I would say. But I'm never going to sit here and tell you I've read every book. This is certainly one I haven't read. There is a little bit of the Shakespeare thing with me when it comes to Jane Austen, where I think what deters some people from reading her work is just like there's so much just density to it, when in actuality it's just kind of like aloof and having fun with itself. I think she's a really fun writer who likes to take some fun shots at people, just likes having a funny, silly time. And I respect that and I appreciate it. And this movie was not one of the adaptations I have seen before. And I was like, you know what? Whit Stallman's a guy I don't hate. Maybe I'll check this one out and see if it's an enjoyable time. And it is. This is a really good adaptation. I think it's one of the more looser adaptations, not even in terms of like, oh man, it's taking inspiration from the book, but I just think in terms of like, we're doing something that feels more inherent to what Austen was writing as opposed to take it so self-serious. We're having fun and it's very loose and it's just very energetic and very dry. It is a very dry movie. The humor is so slow and just so deadpan, and maybe that's why it works for me more than other adaptations of Austen, where it just is, this is so not serious, like we're having fun. We're doing a lot of just like bullshit behind the scenes to make you think like there's some grandiose mean going on, but no, there's just like a lady who's just manipulating everyone in her life to get what she wants. And you know what? I gotta respect a lady for doing that. This is the story of Lady Susan Vernon. She recently lost her husband, and with that she lost all of her wealth. And now she is kind of just, couch surfing with all of her elite friends. She's got a friend, Elisa, from America, and her husband's like, yeah, fine, show up for a bit, stay here. She's got some family out in Churchill, so she could stay with them for a bit. It's kind of just like it's a couch surfing lady trying to find a way to make sure her daughter is, well off so she can live the life she's supposed to while still getting a piece of ass for herself. And I'm like, that is pretty cool. I respect that a lot. And having no idea how Susan is portrayed in like the book, Kate Beckinsale nails this. I'm a Kate Beckinsale fan. I could not sit here and tell you my favorite Kate Beckinsale performance. Watching this one and her commitment to just the driest delivery of a woman, just like, yes, I see The Company of Men is kind of boring sometimes, so when I find one that's actually interesting, it's kind of cool. And every single interaction she has with another girl is just like, oh my god, like these men are so stupid, or like, I'm going to manipulate the scene so I get everything I want. And I respect that a lot. She's a very smart character, very confident in herself, and knows what she has to say to get the outcome that she's looking for. That's really funny. I'm sorry, I really respond to that, and it's such a cool thing to see. And Beckinsale, she nails that delivery. She makes that so authentic and cool. And what's really fun about this piece is that it just starts with like setting up all of our players. Here's Lady Susan. She is just going from place to place. Here's her friend from America, Lisa. Here's a man that she's kind of seeing Mannering, and he's kind of just like obsessed with her, but he's also married to somebody, and the person that he's married to, she is kind of like, she's just like in the companionship, or like Mr. Johnson, who's played by Stephen Fry, that's Elisa's husband. He's like looking after her like as a fatherly figure, but it's not really a fatherly figure. So there's that weird connection. And then her husband had family in an estate that's in Churchill. So then you have her family over there where she meets Reginald, which is the brother to her sister-in-law. And he's like a guy who you're just like, not a Lothario, but he's like, an eligible bachelor about town. And everyone's kind of like, this guy, something about this guy. Probably my favorite character because he makes a lot of choices I'd make. And that might be weird to think about considering some of the events that transpire in this movie, but I do like this character. And I think he is well handled where you're like, yeah, he is aware of the circumstance. When Susan comes to stay with them in Churchill and he returns, he's like, this girl is different. He's just dumb enough not to know he's being used by her, but he's smart enough to see that she is not like other girls. So he starts to form an attachment to her, and this sends his sister into a dizzy, like, okay, no, you cannot like be infatuated with this woman. Our social status is too important. So she sends a letter to her parents and they're like, what the hell's he doing with this lady? And that makes everybody a little uncomfortable with having Susan staying there for a while. Meanwhile, Susan has a daughter who is, I guess, of age now. She's kind of coming of age, Frederica. And she's at school, but she hates school, so she kind of like runs away from school. So she comes to Churchill to live there now. And that is when we see that she is being pursued by this man named James Martin. Now, James Martin, he's not Solomon, as they say in the movie. He's kind of an idiot, and he is such a funny guy just to see show up in this world. Because everybody, even if they're faking like their level of class or like societal standing, he's just a guy that has no idea how to talk normal. So when he first is introduced to the whole family, he's just losing his mind. He's like, yes, I know all these things we're talking about. I'm a well-read man. There's 12 commandments. And they're like, no, there's only 10. Yes, then what 2 should we forget about? Just like, dude, it's great. I think it's so great. And Tom Bennett is the actor that plays James Martin. And it's really funny. Like, that is such like this guy's dumb, but you kind of love him. You're kind of rooting for him. And he's interested in Frederica. And Susan's like, I know he's kind of lame, but I also need you to know we don't have any money and we don't have any societal standing left. And I'm warming out our welcome here at this home. So you should marry him. But Frederica does not want to marry him. And she confides that in her uncle Reginald. And Reginald is kind of after Susan at the moment, but also Mannering is after Susan at this moment, and she's trying to have her cake and eat it too, where she can potentially marry Reginald and then still be able to fool around with Mannering. And you're just like, this is so silly and classy at the same time. The set is immaculate. I know, like, over there on the, Straits of England and all that, they just have all of these old buildings and old roads down every alley. But it just looks so great to see it. Well, especially in like contemporary settings where it's just like we have modern technology where we can film this stuff and make it look a little bit more special. It just feels so cool. I just love the way it looks. And this script is great. It is kind of hard to follow sometimes, just the way they're talking, but it's never just like an annoying, like they're using words that you don't understand. They just have they just have like a slight change to them where you're like, oh yes, we don't really say that brings me disfavor anymore. We would never say that today, but you do understand what's being said there where it's not egregious. But the way that Lady Susan just talks so cleverly towards everything, it's some of my favorite stuff ever. Like, she is so put together, so confident in every situation. I love all the sequences where she goes back to, is it Langford where Elisa is, or is she in London? I can't remember. I think she's in London, actually. And every time, it's just Susan and Alicia, and they're just talking, and she's like, yeah, well, I'm doing this to that guy and that to this guy, and it's pretty fun. And Lisa's like, you know what you should do? Well, your daughter to be happy, you should marry this guy. That way you can provide for her. Like, come on, you're Kate Beckinsale, babe. You're still pretty damn sexy. I'm sure if you just tried a little harder, you could find a couple things to get there, and you'd be well off in that, right? And I'm doing a bad job of explaining this just because there are so many characters thrown in here. There is so much going on. Like, the more time goes on in the movie, the more characters just show up, and then everybody's just in a room at one time, and Mannering's wife becomes like a character who starts yelling at everybody because she knows that Susan and her wife and her husband are having the affair. And then that makes Reginald upset because he's like, I'm going to marry Susan. But then he realizes that maybe she is seeing Mannering, and then she feels so disgusted by him not trusting her that she has to call off their engagement. So now they're not going to be together. And I think that's kind of an interesting way where it keeps him out of the clear, where he's like, I still really like this girl, but clearly I don't understand what's going on. And at that point, he returns back to Churchill, but also Susan returns back to Churchill to get Frederica, because all of the family in Churchill, what is their name again? Deckery. Shall I try more times to attempt to say their name? The family in Churchill, they all really like Frederica and they want her to stay there because she's like a songbird. And we we have some of the older men of the family, like, oh, she's like the nightingale, like this Siri songbird or something, this Sally songbird or the nightingale valor or something. You're like, you guys are goofy and silly. Just let this girl live. And it's kind of this, watching this mom manipulate all the idiots in their lives to make sure her daughter is well off. So how this kind of plays out as we're kind of going through this entire time, Susan has been leading on two different men. She's been manipulating the women in her life. She's been telling her friend, like, hey, I'm trying here. What do you think I should do? Her friend Elise is like, well, if Frederica does not want to marry James, maybe you should marry James. That way you have money and you can have that ability to be there. But at that time, too, Mannering and his wife are filing for divorce and they're no longer going to be together. So a heartbroken Mannering can come live with James and Susan. So she can still see Mannering, and James is such an idiot, he's oblivious to the whole thing. Meanwhile, Reginald decides he's going to marry Frederica, and the movie ends with their wedding and her finally singing to the public. And I'm like, I really dig it. If I had to compare it to a style of movie that's out now that I think a lot of people might have seen before, it's kind of like The Favorite, the Yorgos Lanthimos piece, where it's just, this is so specific in tone, and it definitely feels like something a lot of people are going to respond to. I really dug this adaptation. I think Kate Beckinsale is fantastic. I think the entire supporting cast is phenomenal. They're all doing some very heavy lifting. For the first time talking about Austen, I hope I did okay. I don't think I did, though, because it's just like social circumstances and people talking to people. That's silly. This is less of the love story than some of her other works, where it's like, I'm a man desperately in love with a woman. It's more like, no, we have to make these movements happen so we can stay together and stay wealthy. And it's also about like a girl having some good friends and they're gossiping with each other about all of that. And I kind of respect that. It's really dry comedy, and that's what makes this work so well. And if you have not seen this adaptation yet, I highly encourage you to do so. It's on Mubi. That's where I watched it. And I just think this is a good type of story. I've always liked this type of movie when it can be executed this perfectly. I respond well to it. And hey, just watching Kate Beckinsale talk like the smartest person in the room and manipulate every man in her life just to get what she wants so she gets money and power for her and her daughter, that's a really cool thing to see. And that's pretty Jane Austen-y, so I like it a lot. And that, my dear friends, my love and friendships, if you will, is going to do it for this episode of Classic Tales. Thank you all for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.